When I was 18, love felt like a glass lake, so smooth I could walk across it. Evan and I had been together since freshman year, and while everyone else's relationships rippled and cracked and sank into the weeds, ours just held. He ran cross-country, I ran the school paper. We were the couple people pointed to when teachers did the fake any engagements joke at graduation. We weren't engaged, but we had plans. He'd go to Purdue. I'd follow him there after a year at community college to save money, and we'd both live on instant ramen and terrible coffee, and the hope that us was a sturdy enough raft to survive becoming grown-ups. And then came Colby. Back then he was 22 and cocky in a way that seemed like confidence. He had this gleaming smile, designer belt on a substitute teacher's paycheck, and a laugh that made teachers pause because he sounded like he knew secrets. He wasn't faculty. He coached a volunteer debate workshop and called himself a strategy consultant for a couple local campaigns. He said it with the seriousness of a surgeon talking about a transplant. He also mentored Evan after practice because, according to Colby, boys need men who see the blueprint of greatness. He said that about himself without even blinking. I didn't clock the danger because I'd been trained to see the other girl as the threat. Growing up, the stories were always about the girl who ruined it, the rival with eyeliner like a knife. They weren't about the man in the crisp shirt who positioned himself like a lighthouse and then turned out to be a siren. He told Evan that yes, he was amazing, that yes, he was underappreciated, and that maybe, just maybe, the thing holding him back wasn't resources or time but small expectations in a small town. He made our love sound like the most suffocating kind of domesticity, like I'd be the girl folding tiny towels while Evan's greatness grew mold. He took Evan to a coffee shop once to talk goals, and when Evan came back, he wasn't mine anymore. The breakup was a scene, Evan crying and trying to explain that he didn't know what this was, but he knew he had to follow it. He'd never felt so seen, that I was good, but Colby made him feel inevitable. You don't argue with inevitability. Colby was tactless enough to show up at prom to take photos, and tactful enough to angle the lens, so he was always in them with Evan shoulder to shoulder, the way you'd stand by someone you plan to keep. He loved being seen with my heartbreak on his arm. I knew because after the dance, he pulled me aside near the stairs and told me, with that glassy smile, that love is an upgrade economy, and that I seemed sweet. He said the last part like a condolence card. I wish I could tell you I had a sharp comeback. I remember my hands shaking and the taste of metal. I blocked them both on everything with the vengeance only a teenage girl can muster. The summer baked the hurt into me like clay. I moved out of state for a while, worked, saved, studied. I forgot Evan in the way you forget to breathe when you're swimming underwater, until you break the surface and your lungs do that panicked gasp thing and you realize forgetting isn't the same as being okay. Life kept being life. I didn't turn into a movie version of myself. There was no glamorous montage. I worked 2 jobs, got my degree in marketing, learned more about nonprofits than I thought I ever would, and figured out how to build a life that had nothing to do with being someone's girlfriend. I dated thoughtfully and broke up even more thoughtfully, learned to like my own company, and got into the habit of writing 3 good things about my day before bed, even if one was the basil plant lived. Small survivals count. 7 years passed. One random Thursday in March, I was helping plan a gala for a regional literacy foundation and found myself in a conference room with a board member who joined to be useful in the community. He was the kind of man whose presence shifts the temperature in a room, quiet, tall, a little severe at first, but when he laughed I understood why people told him their secrets. His name was Marcus. He was in his mid-30s and ran a network of architectural firms. His dad had been a roofer. He'd built everything else himself, including a reputation for paying his interns and asking his senior people to teach as much as they drew. I did not fall in love at first sight. I liked talking to him, and then I liked looking for him in meetings, and then I liked imagining he was the kind of man who could be a lighthouse without being a siren. He asked if I wanted to get coffee on a day the weather forgot spring was supposed to show up. We ended up walking 4 more blocks in the rain because it was easier to keep the conversation moving than it was to say goodbye. 3 months later, we were a we. 6 months after that, He leaned across my kitchen island with my laptop open and said in a tone so casual it felt like a dare, "By the way, my new project manager is named Evan. You might have gone to high school with him." I'd never said Evan's name to Marcus, not because I was hiding anything, but because some fossils belong to old eras. The last I'd heard, Evan and Colby had gone to Chicago together and fizzled after a couple of years, Evan at a middling firm doing interiors, Colby doing brand strategy for a chain of boutique gyms and adding the word executive to every noun. Marcus could read a floor plan and a face. "Do you want me to rescind the offer?" "No," I said, more firmly than I felt. "People get to be new." "Good," he said, like he was pleased we agreed. "Because he's good." And he kind of looked like a man who had stopped expecting good things when I met him, which made me want to offer him 3. Evan's first day, I put on lipstick that said unbothered and texted my group chat that I was fine. Evan walked into the conference room with a portfolio I would have recognized anywhere. His eye for light had only gotten better, but a posture that said he'd learned to walk around disappointment. He saw me. He froze. His mouth made a shape that wasn't a word. "Hi, Evan," I said. "Danny," he said, and then, because kindness is contagious, or maybe just muscle memory, "You look good." We had coffee on the pretense of discussing upcoming projects. He apologized without defense or detours. He called what he'd done to me by its right name, which is a kind of spell that makes forgiveness possible. "Colby told me I'd outgrown everything that didn't look like him," Evan said, staring at his cup. "Turns out what I outgrew was the version of me that needed to be told I was special like a secret." He liked my potential. He hated my personhood. He hated you because you were reality. I hated me because I agreed with him. I didn't let him absolve me of the hurt. But I did let him be new. He introduced himself to my boyfriend as "your problem now," and Marcus laughed and said, "I only collect excellent problems." Evan learned how to take praise again. We were all doing fine, without Colby, until the reunion invitation arrived in a white envelope, so starched it could have stood up by itself. "Do we have to go?" I asked my friend Alicia as we picked dresses at a consignment shop, because I refused to be that girl who buys formal wear to wear once. "You don't have to do anything," she said. "But if you want to, chef's kiss, release some long fermentation petty, there will be an audience." "I'm not petty." "You're a recovering people pleaser with good taste and revenge," she said. Which is a powerful combination. Marcus, who believes in showing up for the community even when the community is a gymnasium that still smells like dodgeball, said, "If you go, I go. If you skip, we'll go get overpriced pasta and tell each other embarrassing childhood stories." I once cut my own bangs with craft scissors before picture day, I confessed. "Impossible," he said. "You were born with those eyebrows." We went. I wore a black dress I could breathe in. Marcus wore the suit that made everyone assume he was the one moderating the panel, if there had been a panel. I put on the necklace my grandmother left me and packed a tiny clutch with chapstick, gum, and backup grace. Reunions are theme parks built out of nostalgia and cheap wine. Everybody tries to compress 10 years of living into 3 lines. I'm in logistics, married, 2 kids. I moved to Denver and do yoga on rocks. I started a company that helps people optimize their morning pages. The bleachers had been draped with fairy lights that somehow made the scuffed wood look intentional. The DJ recognized us from when we begged him to play The Killers at homecoming and smirked like he'd been waiting a decade to say no again. Colby arrived late, like the kind of man who considers himself a reveal. He'd put on weight without losing the habit of smiling like he owned everybody's narrative. He wore a blazer with elbow patches and a very large watch that said, "I need you to know time is mine." He scouted the room for witnesses, then headed straight for me. "Danielle," he said, as if he was the one who got to give me my full name, as if he hadn't swallowed Danny like it was a seed. "You look domesticated." My ring was right there. He wanted me to flinch. Marcus stepped closer, not possessively, just geographically, to be obviously mine and equally obviously not in competition. "This is my fiancé, Marcus," I said. "Marcus, this is Colby." He used to coach debate and talk about himself in the third person. "Fiancé?" Colby made it a question with added punctuation. "Congratulations. So which CrossFit does he own?" Marcus smiled in a way only people with firm centers can. I own a boring company that designs buildings to be less stupid. Nice to meet you. It took 11 seconds for recognition to hit Colby's face like a tide coming in. Marcus Hale, he said, going paler. From Halestrad? The firm. Among others. Marcus shrugged like it was a hobby. Why? Colby didn't answer because he didn't need to. Evan arrived in the same moment, with Alicia beside him like a bodyguard in sensible heels. He saw Colby. The air changed. Silence isn't the absence of noise. It's the presence of possibility. Evan, Colby said, reaching out with the entitlement of a man who thinks every bridge is a drawbridge he controls. Hey. Evan looked at his own hand, as if checking whether it would betray him, and then didn't extend it. Colby. Ouch, Colby said, clapping his chest dramatically. Time was we were inseparable. Time was, Evan agreed. Now I have taste. If this sounds like a script, it wasn't. It was messy and human and real. Colby tried to roll his eyes at me like we were co-conspirators in some ancient hetero rivalry. Still mad, he asked me, as if the worst thing a woman could be was angry in the presence of her oppressor. You know, Evan always needed someone to hold his hand. Don't feel bad. You mistake my boundaries for bitterness, I said lightly, and then, because I'd come prepared, we're hosting the silent auction tonight. Did you bring a checkbook, Colby? Or did the judge give it to your ex? I didn't ask it loudly. I didn't have to. Bad men are their own microphones. Colby blinked. The thing about people who win at their own rigged games is they assume every field is theirs. Rumors, he said smoothly. My ex is vindictive. Oh, the ex is vindictive? Alicia chimed in. Is he vindictive like the boutique gym you branded under a shell LLC, then loaned assets from, then walked away from when payroll came due? Allegations, Colby said through teeth he probably whitened at home with strips. Public records, Evan said, and held up his phone. A person doesn't have to be a villain to be dangerous, but Colby was both. He'd left a trail that looked like confetti when you zoomed out and like embezzlement when you zoomed in. He liked to consult nonprofits and then invoice them for the privilege of his presence. He'd been careful, but not careful enough. Here's the thing, I hadn't planned to scorch earth. I'd planned to look good, drink champagne, and go home with the man who loved me like I was a map he actually wanted to read. But when the reunion committee asked me to help with the silent auction, because once you help with one gala, you get cursed with experience, I realized there was an opportunity. Not to humiliate, but to rearrange the chessboard so the truth had a clear path to checkmate. I'd done my homework. As part of the auction, we had a high-ticket item, a private tour of the new Performing Arts Center designed by Hale Lestrade, with the lead architect, Marcus, and the project manager, Evan. Colby had once bragged on Facebook, where he blocked me, but not Alicia, rookie mistake, about being deeply connected to the donor circuit, which was code for, I like to be within 2 chairs of people with money. He also liked to bid on flashy items and then forget to pay or claim them, because being seen bidding was the sport and fulfilling obligations was for peasants. So I set a trap that wasn't a trap so much as a mirror. We put the tour in the first wave of items, announced via microphone that due to the nonprofit's long relationship with Hale Lestrade, any bids would be matched by a private donor up to a set amount, and then made sure to seat the loudest people near the sign-up sheets. The thing about bullies is they perform. They don't know how not to. Colby swaggered to the table 40 minutes later, after 3 rounds of whiskey and a story about how his consulting firm had a waiting list. He saw the bid sheet. He saw the names. He saw that Evan's signature was on the description as project manager. He looked at me to see if I'd blink. I'll start it at $5,000, he announced to no one in particular and everyone all at once, and wrote his name down in block letters so large they looked like they were shouting. I smiled in a way my grandmother would have called church polite. The auction heated up. A dentist with a fondness for saxophone solos bid $6,000. Colby bumped it to $7,500. An orthodontist power couple went to $8,000 out of pure marital competitiveness. Colby made a little speech about civic engagement and scrawled $10,000 like it was a number he and God had invented together. I let it ride to $12,500. Then I signaled the MC, who announced that the matching donor had agreed to raise the cap if any single item hit $15,000. Colby's eyes glittered with the particular mania of a man who sees attention as oxygen. He wrote $15,500, did a little bow, and sauntered away with the exhausted smirk of someone who believed he'd secured not just a tour, but reinstatement into a world that was quietly escorting him to the door. You could say I engineered that moment. But all I really did was bring a fan to a house of cards. Because here's the thing about public pledges, there's paper afterward. There are receipts. There are emails from nice volunteers saying, "How would you like to remit?" There are online forms that require real addresses that correspond to real bank accounts. And there are boards, like the Literacy Foundation's board, on which sit people like Marcus, who have a very allergic reaction to check kiting, and people like me who have an archival memory for past behavior. Monday morning, the foundation sent the invoice. Tuesday, Colby replied with a cheery, "We'll drop off a check by Friday." Friday came and went. The following Tuesday, a volunteer named Becca got a voicemail that was mostly sighs and "the bank has been difficult." 2 Fridays later, a messenger arrived with a cashier's check that, upon deposit, turned out to be a beautifully printed rectangle of fiction. Becca forwarded me the notice with a sad face emoji. I forwarded it to Marcus with context. Marcus forwarded it to the Foundation's counsel with an entire paragraph that consisted of the phrase, "absolutely not," constructed out of different synonyms. We didn't need to press any magic buttons. The Foundation sent their standard letter, "Pay within 15 business days, or you will be ineligible to participate in future philanthropic events coordinated by our organization and our partner network." Their partner network was big. You can be an occasional nuisance to a few volunteers and still be tolerated. You can't bounce a $15,500 check and expect to keep your donor badge. Not when people remember you've done this exact performance with gym memberships and sponsored 5 Burmese chots and the time you lost your wallet at a hospital gala like you were an Elizabethan prince. Colby called me. I didn't give him my number. Someone must have. He started with charm, escalated to condescension, and ended with threats. "You're petty," he said. "You always were. You're telling me you never messed up, Danny? You never wanted something so bad you broke a rule to get it?" "I broke rules to survive on tips and homework, Colby," I said. "You break rules because you think other people will carry you when you fall." He tried to insult Marcus, which was cute given the power differential. "Your fiancé only cares because he wants to look pious in his board minutes," he sneered. "My fiancé cares because he was raised not to steal," I said. He hung up. The Foundation's letter did its quiet work. The partner network circulated his name the way you circulate a warning about nuts in the brownies. He lost access to the rooms where he'd gotten his reflected shine. The world didn't crumble, because worlds rarely do. They recalibrate. The reunion committee, armed with more guts than funding, banned him from future events citing behavior unbecoming, which is Midwestern for "you embarrassed us in front of the good tablecloths." The hotel put him on their do not invite list for vendor nights because he'd yelled at Becca, and because Becca was the kind of volunteer who learned everybody's kids' names and wrote thank you notes with stickers. You don't make enemies of Becca's. As for Evan, Colby tried a last gasp. He showed up at the firm one afternoon feigning confusion about the tour logistics he'd never paid for. He wore a charcoal suit that fit like a costume and a look of weary aristocracy, like we were inconveniencing him by insisting mailboxes be real. He didn't make it past reception. Marcus met him in the lobby because leaders don't outsource difficult no-s. I watched from down the hall, not because I needed to, but because there are moments you earn the right to witness. "Leave," Marcus said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten to call the cops. He just said it like a fact that didn't belong to either of them. "You're not welcome in this building. You attempted to defraud a non-profit my firm supports. You harassed one of my employees at a public event. You don't get to use our name to launder your reputation." Colby tried his favorite weapon, shame, aimed like a boomerang at the man least likely to be hit. "You think you're better than me? You're just a man who can't be bought by flattery," Marcus said. "Which makes me very boring to you." Security escorted Colby out with all the ceremony of taking out the recycling. He sputtered. He invoked lawyers like ghosts. The only thing scarier than the law, for men like him, is consequence. This would be a cool place to put a fireworks finale. But my favorite part of the story happened later, when the lights were normal and the champagne glasses washed out and the world made that small thunk noise it makes when it returns to its default setting. We held the tour anyway. The dentist and the orthodontists donated the difference. The Performing Arts Center had a staircase that curved like a question mark and a lobby where the afternoon sun behaved like a guest worth seating near the good windows. Evan talked about the way materials teach people how to move. He gestured the way he did when we were 17, and he explained why a photo worked, except now there was no apology tucked behind it. I watched him realize that the men in charge were not waiting to pull the rug out from under him. He kept expecting someone to turn his success into a punchline. No one did. After the tour, we ended up at a cheap Thai place where the tables are always slightly sticky and the food is always perfect. Marcus ate his pad see ew like he'd carried scaffolding that day, not spreadsheets. Evan raised his beer. To Becca, he said, because gratitude belongs to the people who guard the gates quietly. To Becca, we echoed. Evan looked at me. To you, Danny. For letting me be new. To you, I said, for doing the work. Later, at home, I took off the necklace my grandmother left me and set it on the nightstand and felt, not victory, which is sharp, but rightness, which is soft. Marcus came up behind me and kissed that spot beneath my ear that makes my spine forget its job for a second. Is it gloating? He asked in a voice that warmed my knees, if the person in question gloated first for years and we just took our turn? It's not gloating, I said. It's alignment. He laughed. Marry me in June, he asked, like we'd been building toward it all along. June is very cliché, I said. And yes. When I told my mother, she did the thing where she pretended to be fine and then cried on the phone anyway. When I told Alicia, she demanded 3 separate dress shopping days for research. When I told Becca, she sent a card with stickers. A week later, a message arrived in my inbox from an address I recognized without wanting to, Colby. The subject line was a thought. The body was long, defensive, then suddenly conciliatory, then suddenly grandiose, as if a choir swelled behind his cursor. He used phrases like mutual reputational harm and no hard feelings and, my favorite, let's collaborate. I forwarded it to the Foundation's council and to the 2 nonprofits he'd tried to court since his little shopping spree. They wrote back with a single line each, we'll handle it. I didn't respond to him. I didn't need to. A person like that needs you to be the chorus to his solo, and the only thing that really ruins the song is silence. On the day we took our engagement photos, the photographer asked how we'd met. I said volunteering, which was true in the way that the best stories are, not exhaustive, but accurate. She asked if we wanted a shot on the steps of the Performing Arts Center, because the light was pretty. We did. The building glowed like it was happy to be admired. Passers-by smiled at us, or at the dog off-leash that kept stealing attention, or at the way June, yes, June, makes people act like kindness is mandatory. The reunion committee sent out a post-event newsletter with photos. In one, I saw myself laughing at something Evan said while Marcus looked at me like the thing I'd said was more important than the thing he was about to say. In another, I saw Colby in the background of a crowd shot, mouth tense, eyes scanning for a stage that wasn't there. The caption didn't mention him. The world had already revised. I sent the newsletter to my grandmother's old email account even though no one checks it anymore. I like the idea that somewhere, she's sipping coffee the color of earth and nodding at my ring, at my dress that I can breathe in, at the way I learned to make my own weather. She'd have liked Marcus. She'd have liked Becca. She'd have said, dryly, about Colby, some people are just hungry. It doesn't mean you set the table. There's no perfect justice. The bad don't always fall at the right speed. But sometimes you get a little sweetness within the same calendar year, and then you get the long sweetness that tastes like living well. I'm not naive enough to think the story ends cleanly. People like Colby become consultants to other Colbys. They find new rooms. They practice new speeches. They slip. They try again. Our job isn't to stop them all, it's to build rooms where they can't root. The gallery where we're getting married sits 3 blocks from the high school. You can see the gymnasium roof if you squint. Sometimes I imagine the kid version of me, the one with eyeliner like a manifesto, walking across the parking lot carrying a heart that hadn't yet learned it could repair itself. I want to tell her that people will try to steal things from you, boys, plans, even your voice. I want to tell her that she will learn how to bolt her doors without bolting her heart, that she will build something so solid that if someone tries to take it, they'll find themselves holding only the shadow. At our reception, between toasts from Alicia and a speech by my mother that made every person with a daughter cry a little, Marcus leaned close and said, "Do you remember the lake you told me about? The one you used to imagine walking across?" "Yeah," I said. "The glass." "It never had to be glass," he said gently. "You only needed a bridge." Behind him, in the doorway, I saw Evan talking to a new hire with the concentration of someone who's deciding how to be the boss he needed. I saw Becca wrangling a florist's late invoice with a pen and a smile. I saw the arts center in the distance, with lights like a constellation. I felt happy, the same way you feel full when you've eaten something simple and right. After the last song, after the last hug, after the last cupcake in a napkin, Marcus and I stepped out into the indigo night. The street smelled like summer and dish soap. We stood there quietly, like the way you stand after a long laugh, the silence not empty, but satisfied. "Let's go home," he said. We did. And if revenge had been on the menu, sweet and plated, I'd have taken one bite and then pushed the rest across the table. Not because I wasn't hungry, but because I'd already had dinner.